What I found from the neuroscience is your brain only operates in one of two states. It's that simple. You're either in one or the other. It's what's called a survival state or an executive state. Okay? So survival state is a mode where if your life is in actual danger, you need this part of your brain. You need to be in this state to survive, because your brain can't think and it has to react without thinking. So if a tiger's in front of you about to eat you, you sit there and you start thinking about things, you're dead, right? So the problem with that is the higher functions of your brain are literally shut off. Your critical thinking skills, your creativity, your ability to connect with people and have empathy. So the other state that you're in is what I call an executive state. So this is where a lot of your higher functions come up, right? Like the things I mentioned, the creativity, problem-solving skills, something called executive function, which is your ability to make good decisions. So all of that turns on when you're in an executive state. So the problem is the research is showing that for a majority of our adult lives, we're in the survival state, where we're reacting without thinking. And the reason for this isn't because you're actually about to die physically, it's because of uncomfortable emotions. So your brain kind of gets tricked into thinking all these uncomfortable emotions are life-threatening.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Van End.
And I'm Shane.
And today we are joined by my man, Dr. Eugene K. Choi. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. So, guys, we have got a lot to cover today. So make sure, by the way, to like, share, follow, subscribe, and stay to the end of the episode because there's going to be a lot of phenomenal stuff for you. Today, we are going to go over one of executives' biggest weaknesses, which is survival state. How do you get out of survival state? How do you understand the fight, flight, freeze response? What can you do to get out of it? And Eugene is a master of neuroscience, and he's a phenomenal coach. And he's going to walk you through how to create the awareness around these problems, how to get out of it, how to build yourself, build your company, and do it in a really freaking easy step-by-step way. So, guys, I am extremely excited for this episode, and I hope you are too. Eugene, we're about to break it down, man. You ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Eugene, it is great having you here, my man. I am so excited to jump in and do this interview with you. You are one of my longstanding friends. And I mean, dude, it is so great. I got my two best friends on this podcast right now. Do we need anything else? Dude, this is going to be great. So I would love to have you get a little bit more into your story and just tell people, like, how did you start making this phenomenal journey? You know, you went from clinical pharmacy, neuroscience, coaching. Like, how did you go through all of these transitions? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's been such a wild ride, man. And first off, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And, you know, like a lot of people, I grew up pretty lower middle class, not making that much money as a family. They're immigrants working hard, but not wealthy at all. And I thought money would solve the problems, right? So worked my butt off, and eventually when I graduated high school, I ended up choosing pharmacy school because it was pretty well known that it's a stable career, 6-figure salary right out of college. So I did all that, barely graduated, became a pharmacist, and I remember just working and very depressed. Trust issues were still there, family issues were still there. You know, my parents split up because of financial issues, right? So after a few years, you become really jaded. I wasn't feeling that great, pretty depressed and all that, even though I had all those things. I had the 6-figure salary, the brand new sports car, the brand new apartment, all of that, living in New York City, out in Queens. And on paper, everything looked great, but I was just, on the inside, it just felt horrible. So it just started this journey of exploring. So what I did was, long story short, I quit after 3 years. I asked my wife, would she be okay if we spent about a month and a half to 2 months on a cross-country road trip to move to Los Angeles, because I had this opportunity to come up with this group of up-and-coming filmmakers, and they invited me to join the team. So I joined them. It's a group called Jubilee Media. They got pretty well known now. I want to say they're at like 9 million or 10 million subscribers online. I was with them when they were starting off as a creative. So that taught me a lot about marketing without realizing I was learning about marketing, because we're creating multiple pieces of viral content. So when you're able to do it more than once, you know it's not by accident. So that taught me a lot. But after about 2 years, it's a combo of burnt out and ran out of money. We were all living off our savings at the time because we were just starting off. So I went back to pharmacy, eventually became a supervisor, and I was managing 6 major hospitals and over 250 clinics out in Los Angeles County. And it just taught me a lot about leadership, man. It's like just because you're a manager doesn't mean you're a leader. And the bureaucracy, the politics, all of that really started getting to me. And eventually I quit that because I remember this wasn't living. I was commuting like over an hour each way to the office, barely seeing the kids. I just had my first kid, and then the second kid came out. So I decided to kind of think through like, how do I leverage my skill sets? And that's what started that journey. So I quit. I hired a business coach, paid like 18K for like a business coach company. And I just started putting content out there. And they saw that I was making a lot of progress. I think I generated over 1 million views on my articles within the span of a year because I was leveraging my skills from my filmmaking days and doing it for blogging. They hired me. CEO wanted to train me as a business coach. When else do you get to get mentorship like that from a CEO of a multi-million dollar business? That's how I got into business coaching, and my healthcare background came full circle because I realized a lot of businesses I was coaching, because I was coaching hundreds of them by that point. It's not a strategy issue a lot of times. It's a mental issue. It's a psychological issue, mindset issue. They know what to do. They're not doing it. So that's what drove me down the rabbit hole that I was very grateful for my healthcare background, because now I'm diving into neuroscience. Why does this happen? How do you overcome it? And ever since then, that's how I built my brand. One day I started putting more content out. One day one of my articles that I wrote generated 7 million views and went viral one year. And then I made for my business in a weekend what the company I was contracting was paying me for the whole year. And I went full time since then. So it's a lot of mental performance, mindset, backed by neuroscience. How do you perform, especially in high pressure, high change, high stakes environments, which we're dealing with every day, all of us, right? So I just got obsessed with that and have been teaching it ever since, whether it's through my coaching, my keynote talks, my writing. Yeah.
It's a very fascinating journey, but what I love about it is that it's a lot like mine.
Mm.
One of the things that made me drawn to you as a friend is our lives were so similar, in the sense that we just were doing something else, and then we realized we had a different passion, and we went all in and built a whole world around what we believe is possible. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this one, because you just mentioned it, and I think it's really, really relevant from a neuroscience perspective, right? What exactly would you say peak performance should look like in a high stress environment? Like, this is your thing. This is what you do. How do other people learn how to do it too?
Oh man, this is a rabbit hole, right? But
Sure.
so the question is, what does it look like? So what it looks like at a high level is, despite how much pressure there's outside of you, you're able to maintain a calm inner space inside of you. It doesn't get to you. And it's hard to distinguish sometimes, because sometimes it's not numbing yourself. It's not ignoring things. It's being fully aware of the situation, and that pressure doesn't get to you, so that you maintain access. Your brain's critical thinking centers, like your problem solving skills, are actually turned off if the stress gets to you. So you're able to maintain that access, and you're able to make really good decisions as a result of it. Usually it's a hard decision, because it's not a lot of decisions we have to make is very gray, right? It's not one perfect answer. But it does help you problem solve to the best of your ability, especially in high pressure situations, if that makes sense. So they're usually calm. If you ever notice, like really, really amazing CEOs, they have this really crazy ability that even though the company might be on fire in some way, they're just really calm about it. And they think things through. It doesn't mean they're slow, but they can be pretty quick with their decisions. But they have this inner calmness about them, like a genuine calmness, not like a checked out, like I'm overwhelmed. There's a difference there.
I usually take things back, and what I wanted to see the mindset of working from a regular 9 to 5, and especially from a good paying job, and your mindset transition to entrepreneurship. But you said something that I really think is so simple that I want you to explain, because I deal with this. giving virtual assistants or AI services to clients all day long.
Mm.
You said that it's a simple solution that they don't know how to fix, right? Of why they come to actually coaching. Why? If they know what needs to be fixed, why don't they fix it? Is
That's
it
a great question.
fear?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, um, I think I'll start off with kind of like a high level of what's important to understand first, like in very simple terms, right? So, what I found, and this is from the neuroscience, is your brain only operates in one of two states. It's that simple. You're either in one or the other. It's what's called a survival state or an executive state. Okay. So survival state is a mode where if your life is in actual danger, you need this part of your brain. You need to be in this state to survive because your brain can't think and it has to react without thinking. So if a tiger's in front of you about to eat you, you sit there and you start thinking about things, you're dead, right? So it goes into this reactive mode where you're not thinking and you're just immediately reacting. So the problem with that is the higher functions of your brain are literally shut off. Your critical thinking skills, your creativity, your ability to connect with people and have empathy. So the other state that you're in is what's I call an executive state. So this is where a lot of your higher functions come on, right? Like the things I mentioned, the creativity, problem solving skills, something called executive function, which is your ability to make good decisions. So all of that turns on when you're in an executive state. So the problem is the research is showing that for a majority of our adult lives, we're in the survival state where we're reacting without thinking.
Mm.
And the reason for this isn't because you're actually about to die physically. It's because of uncomfortable emotions. So the research is showing that emotional pain can be just as painful as physical pain, right? So your brain kind of gets tricked into thinking all these uncomfortable emotions are life-threatening. So boom, you're not accessing these higher functions of your brain. So now combine that's just like tip of the iceberg, right? Like that's the first like foundational reason of why these kind of things happen where we know what we should do, but we don't do it.
Can I ask an intermediate question in
Of
between what
course.
you just said? As a high performing CEO, business owner, entrepreneur that's, making 7, 8, 9 figures, you have to have the mindset of both because you have to learn how to deal with fires, which is the reactive way, but then come back into, the creative thinking. So is there advice that you can give by making the transitions or the quick switches and not just completely going into one direction? Because I understand what you're saying, but it sounds like that's a regular 9 to 5 or regular low performing entrepreneur that's constantly in that state of mind,
Yeah.
that's numbing the creative thinking.
Right. So this is kind of like the plot twist. It's that a lot of people who consider themselves high performers are actually doing it from a survival state, and it's actually stunting their potential. So there are very high performers in survival, right? Where they produce a lot, they generate a lot of money, but it actually still isn't full potential if they're operating from a state of survival.
Interesting.
So the way I explain this, and this can kind of segue eventually into why do we go into this experience of we know what's good for us, but we don't do it. Like it will eventually get there. But the first thing is that's the big thing most people don't realize. People think they're a high performer, but they're not. So here's what I mean by this. That reactive mode, it's actually only meant for life-threatening situations. I get it if you're like a CEO and maybe you're considering the survival of the company. Like we're talking money, right? Like, oh, they're about to die as a business. But staying in survival actually prevents them from saving the business. And I'm going to kind of illustrate why. So your brain can only do 3 things when it's in survival. Remember, we're reacting without thinking, right? It's the fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's very obvious. The first thing that I always train all of my clients, or when I'm giving a talk, this is what I train them on. Is like, we need to know what it actually looks like. Most people don't pay attention to this. What does fight, flight, freeze actually look like? Because if you're in it, you're not accessing your higher functions. You're not accessing your creativity. You're not accessing your intuition. You're not accessing all of these important things you need, especially if you're a leader, especially if you're leading a group. Because the moment you're in survival, guess who the focus is on? Your brain. It's yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if a CEO is in survival state because they're in their survival mode, they're not looking out for the team. They're looking out for themselves. I'm sorry. Like that's just the way the brain is. So we need to be aware of what this looks like. Fight, flight, freeze in a life-threatening situations, very easy to spot. If someone's pointing a gun at your head, a tiger's in front of you about to eat you, an actual life-threatening situation, you're going to either fight, try to pick up a weapon and fight. You're going to run for your life in flight. That's flight mode when you try to escape. or you play dead and freeze. So possums are famous for doing this because their predators like to eat their food alive. So they play dead so that they don't die. Humans do this in things like war, when the opposing army is coming and you don't want to get killed, so you play dead. So these are all survival tactics. But the problem is most people don't realize, what does this look like in daily life when we're surviving from a feeling that doesn't feel good? What does fighting look like? It's working harder. We work harder when we're stressed. That's a fight mode. So what happens for a lot of people is, because they're just working harder, are we actually working on the right problem? Are we busy solving the wrong problem? Are we climbing the wrong mountain and we didn't realize it until however many years later? Because what our brain does is it goes into tunnel vision. I had this conversation with a client once, successful CEO, multiple 6-7-figure business, all that kind of stuff, right? Inc. 5,000, all that. And he posed the same question you did, Shane, which was, wait, hold on, you need this as a business owner. You need your survival state. And I was just having a conversation with him. I'm like, look, that's a fair point, because his argument was, look, I hit rock bottom. His second wife left him. The court still ordered him to pay over, I think, $2,000 a month for child support. He went broke. And he hit rock bottom. And he said, if it wasn't for my survival mode, where I kept my head down, my shoulders up, and I had to bash through concrete wall after concrete wall, that's the reason I succeeded and built my business. It's a very compelling argument. And it's fair. I'm not trying to diminish it. But I was posing it as a conversation, which was, I was inviting him, like, look, if we're looking at it purely from a neurological perspective, what if, because you're in survival state, because what happens when you're in survival state, you develop tunnel vision. So one way to think about it is, if a hungry lion walks into your room right now, are you going to look anywhere else except where that lion is? You're going to be focused on the threat. But then you're missing out on all this other information that's there. You're not paying attention to it. So when your life is not in danger and we're in that tunnel vision, your brain literally filters out what might have been a better solution, a better idea, a more efficient solution. You ever meet those people where you're like, there's a faster way to do this. And they're like, no, I'm good. I'll keep doing it the way I do it. That's why this happens. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're idiots. It's just because their brain, for whatever reason, when you're in a fight mode, you go into this tunnel vision. And I invited him. I'm like, look, you said you had to bash through concrete wall after concrete wall was the expression. I'm like, what if, even if it's for a moment, you get your body out of fight flight, and because you get out of your tunnel vision, maybe the big aha moment for you could have been, those concrete walls I had to bash through were only 3 feet wide. But because of my tunnel vision, it felt like that was the only option. We feel backed into a corner when we're in survival, and we're not accessing our higher functions of our brain. So if you ever hear that phrase, work smarter, not harder. People in fight mode just work harder, but not smarter, right? So when we develop a skill set like a muscle to be able to flex and get out of the survival more often, you're able to have more aha moments. You're able to see things more clearly. You look at the full picture instead of just focusing on one thing. And I think this is the thing a lot of high performers, or people who consider themselves high performers, struggle with without even realizing it. They think that if I just work hard and get a lot of things done, that means I'm at peak performance, right? But I don't think it is, in my opinion. Because what happens is a lot of us go through a lot of stuff. This happens for a lot of men, right? Because we're taught early on in many cultures that being a man, being masculine, is be tough, don't cry, don't show feelings. So what happens in the brain is, that's a whole half of your brain, by the way. Your whole right hemisphere is where you process emotions and images. So what happens is your brain kind of overcompensates with your logical brain. This is where your logic, your language, your linear thinking comes from. So a lot of us men, that's why if you ever see that stereotypical heterosexual relationship, guys trying to solve the problem, girls just trying to feel heard and seen, and the guy just keeps going, why didn't you do this? Why don't you try that? And she's like, can you just shut up and listen to me for a second? So we overcompensate with the logical brain. And this is why for a lot of men, we keep doing things and we're uncomfortable with feeling feelings, right? So we think we're high performers for that reason. So another client of mine he was in his 60s and he had everything you could imagine on paper, like everything. And he's going, why am I still so stressed all the time, anxious all the time? And he realized, oh my God, I've been in my fight mode my whole life. That was the aha moment. I've been fighting to prove to people that I'm better than my older brother. His older brother, who wasn't even alive anymore, he was a former NFL football player. And my client was sharing with me when he was in high school, his football coach was telling him, don't even try. You're never going to be as good as your older brother. So that emotional pain for a lot of men, causes us to go into a fight mode. I need to prove to people that I'm better. And that always leads to burnout, always leads to a lack of fulfillment. I'm going to fight. We do that by accomplishing more. We do that by trying to get more status, more money. But yeah, like that's a fight mode. We need to be aware of things like that. People who need to always interrupt, impulsive, that could be a fight mode. Being argumentative is a fight mode. When you get defensive, someone says something that triggers you and you feel emotionally hurt now, your brain literally views that person as a threat. So even if it's a loved one, a family member, a child, a parent, now you're verbally attacking them. So we're not aware that all of this stuff is survival because of some sort of emotional sensitivity that we're having, right? Emotional pain we're carrying. Flight mode. What's flight mode look like? It could be things like procrastination. That's a classic one, because I feel uncomfortable of, if I do this now, what if I look stupid? What if I find out I'm not capable of doing it? What if people judge me? Whatever fear is. So we put it off till later and we flee from the task. And that's how we kind of cope with it. Sometimes it's physically avoiding someone, whether it's an ex or an in-law or someone you don't want to see. You physically run away from them, right? And one of the funny things is your brain's not thinking, remember, when you're in flight mode? So one funny story I always like to share is in New York City, I used to take the subway to high school all the time because I went to school in Brooklyn. So we're getting on to the entrance, heading to the entrance of the subway, me and my friend, and we're both Korean. And you ever see those Korean ladies that hand out those pamphlets that are trying to convince you to go to their church, right? Or they're trying to talk to you about Jesus. So we see her approaching us from the corner of our eye. We're like, oh God, like our brain's going into flight mode and we're trying to walk away, but she approaches us and she asks my friend in Korean, 한국 분이세요? Which means, are you Korean? And remember, your brain's not thinking. You're reacting without thinking in flight mode. So his response to the question is, 아니요, which means no. But the dude just said it in Korean.
Right.
So then the old lady's like slapping him, like, and then she's giving us the whole spiel now. And I think that happens in daily life too. When we make stupid mistakes, so to speak, it's because we're just doing something without thinking, right? We might be flight mode without thinking. Where it gets more deeper and subtle is when we start numbing ourselves, right? And I think the key thing is not to judge any of this, because when we judge someone's character or our own character, that's a fight mode too, by the way. I'm insecure about myself, so I'm going to try to put other people down in hopes of trying to make me feel better about myself, right? So it's important not to judge any of this. So when we numb ourselves, what does that look like? Some people overindulge in things like food, TV, alcohol, sex, drugs, to the point of addiction. It's a way to numb our feelings that we don't want to feel. But the problem with that, right, any therapist will tell you, if you numb the not so comfortable feelings, you're also numbing the great feelings, right? So we stay in this kind of like numb, like zoned out mode, and it doesn't feel that great. And people do it as a habit. So it's important to be able to spot this in people. Freeze mode is when you're overwhelmed. It tends to happen when you're overwhelmed. You don't want to make decisions. So if you ever get caught in a lie, you know how kids like do that? Like they freeze. So it's the same thing. We do it as kids and we do it as adults too. But the irony is you're kind of giving away that you're guilty of the lie. When traumatic or tragic events, if you hear about it, like you kind of go into shock, that's a freeze mode. An aha moment I had about the freeze mode as well is, wait, I don't think there's such a thing as laziness when I think about it now. I think people who we consider lazy most likely have some sort of chronic freeze response going on in them, whether it's because something they've been through or whether it's something that's been also passed down genetically or culturally, right? So you don't want to make decisions when you're in this freeze mode. I think we've all been there. You wake up in the morning, you don't want to get out of bed because you're overwhelmed with whatever. So that's the number one practice that I always recommend, is just practice looking at it, being able to identify it, whether it's in others or in yourself. Oh, that's a fight mode. That's a freeze mode. That's a flight mode. Because it empowers you so much to not get triggered. If someone's being a jackass to you and you're like, oh, this person's in their fight mode, like somebody must have, for whatever, like who hurt you, right? For you to be behaving this way towards people, like this is not cool. Doesn't mean you tolerate it, but it at least prevents you from getting yourself triggered over time. So if we can spot this on an everyday basis, this is what gives you the power to get yourself into true peak performance, because awareness is what gives you power, right? How do you have the power to remove a piece of broccoli between your teeth that you're unaware of until it comes into your awareness? You either have to see it in the mirror or someone has to point it out to you and you go, oh, I see it. So awareness is such a powerful tool. And the rabbit hole goes really deep, honestly, like this awareness rabbit hole. I don't think it ever ends. But that's step one, because this is most of our lives. We're living like this without even being aware of it. We just do it. And yeah, that's what happens.
The crazy thing is it's so simple, like just acknowledging it and, being aware of it. That's the first steps. It's pretty much the same thing as sobriety, right? Realizing essentially what you're doing and before you act on it, because you have, well, I think it's 30 seconds, right? When you have an indulgence, right? Whatever your indulgence is, whether it's pornography or drugs or alcohol or whatever the case may be, deciding to act on it within that 30-second window. What people don't understand is after that indulgence goes away, it's done.
Yeah.
You just have to make that logical response within that 30 seconds to not do it and then acknowledge that you didn't do it. It's crazy that something as simple as that and being aware of it can just increase your self-awareness and just overall improve yourself. I think the hardest part is doing that constantly.
Correct. Yeah, it's simple, not easy, not always easy. And that's the thing. It's like when you're in a moment of survival, it's not even 30 seconds. We're talking milliseconds.
Yeah.
Boom. Right? If you see a snake in the corner of your eye, you're not going to spend 30 seconds going, oh, what should I do right now? You do it within milliseconds, and your five senses are paying attention to this every moment.
Right.
This is how we stayed alive, honestly. We do need survival, by the way. It's the reason we're alive today. So, but the thing is, though, this is like the deeper rabbit hole, is by the time we're about 35 years old, 90 to 95% of the brain goes subconscious. So in simpler terms, you're on autopilot.
Right.
So you do it without thinking. So the problem there is, though, if a lot of our programming, just like you can program a computer, you can automate things with tech to do the same thing every day, it's the same thing with our brains. Mm. It's for efficiency purposes. You don't walk down the stairs going, I'm going to put my left foot out now. I'm going to put my right foot out now. We don't do that. So our brain is extremely efficient, but it's just biased towards whatever you tell the brain to do. So most people don't realize how they've been programmed, though. Mm. So when we look at, am I programmed in a fight, flight, freeze response? This is why we keep doing it without thinking. You just keep doing it every day. And 95% of your brain is on autopilot. We make 30,000 decisions a day. Majority of those decisions are the same decisions every day, and we do it without thinking about it, right? You wake up with your routines. So that's the part where this is the reason why, even though we know something's good for us, we can't do it, because the programming is there for us to just keep behaving the same way over and over again. So how do we reprogram these programs that we know are working against us? This is why we need to look at it first and develop the skill of reprogramming things, right? And that's kind of the rabbit hole I went down in my work, is how do you do that? Because willpower doesn't work. To just tell yourself every day, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But if you don't equip yourself with the tools and like, well, how do I actually neurologically change these habits?
Starts with the brain.
Starts with the brain, exactly. And the moment you get better at that, you're a different person. You're a different person.
All right. So here's the question then. We go into survival state because we're apparently fighting saber-tooth tigers here in 2025. But let's just say...
Or not being good enough for our parents. Or the breakup we had.
It's always the extremes with Ben.
Yeah, you just agree with me, though. Yeah, that or like... you're arguing with your wife, your kid made you stub your toe. I don't know. All these ridiculous reasons that we absolve ourselves of responsibility for our emotional well-being, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. Every time you're in survival states, because you're assigning blame to someone or something else. So
correct.
Let's help empower people. This is what you do. But more appropriately, why don't you tell them what they do? How do we get people from survival state to executive state? What's the transition that has to occur for someone to have this awareness to actually start empowering themselves?
Yeah. So I categorize it into two things in terms of what the work is. So there's short-term work. So these are like quick tips and tools that you can use to help you. And then there's long-term work. This is what actually reprograms the autopilot that you have for however many years in your life that you just keep doing it. Right. Okay. So the short-term work, number one is just practice that awareness. It's just like, look at what's flight, look at what's fight, look at what's freeze. Just pay attention to it without judgment on a daily basis. That's what I always recommend. And then in terms of some actionable steps, there's something called name it to tame it in the parenting psychology industry. I don't know if you ever heard that phrase, name it to tame it. So it's just naming your feelings. So UCLA did this study where they had a group of people come into the room, and they would show people's pictures of people's faces with different emotions. So anger, anxiety, happiness, joy.
I've seen that.
Yeah, right. So they show the picture and they have the brain scans on these participants' heads. As soon as they show a picture of someone in a survival emotion, which by the way is just an emotion that doesn't feel that great. That's it. It's not a bad emotion. It's just uncomfortable, in my opinion, right? So as soon as they see it, their amygdala, which is their survival brain, immediately lights up. But what was interesting was the researcher would be like, can you tell me what emotion this person's feeling in the picture? And they go, oh, that's anger. That's frustration. As soon as they name the emotion, the survival state brain turned off, executive state brain turned on.
Interesting.
What's one of the reasons why this happens? To label something requires you to think about it. In survival state, you cannot think. So this is why in coaching, it's very powerful to ask questions, because you're forcing their brain to think about it, especially if their brain is in a state of survival. So you're getting them out of it, because once you're in that frontal lobe, which is where your executive state brain comes from, this is where your emotional regulation centers are from too. It helps you regulate your emotions. So just simply naming the emotion is something you can do anytime. Oh, I'm feeling pissed off. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. And a clinical psychologist friend of mine was also giving me an extra tip on this. It's like, it's also important to think about the words you choose. There's a difference between I am versus I feel. I am is presuming it's an identity. I am sad, meaning like it's your identity. It's who you are. But feelings are not permanent. How do we know this? Because they come and go. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're annoyed. So feelings are not permanent. So when you say I feel, you're acknowledging, hey, this is a feeling. This is not a permanent feeling. This will come and go, but you're acknowledging it, and it helps you regulate your nervous system. So that's one short term. Another one is something you hear about all the time, which is deep breaths. Taking nice deep breaths, because what's happening is the bottom of your lungs, there's your diaphragm. This is where it's called your parasympathetic nerves. Throwing a little jargon out there, but that's basically the part of your nervous system that helps you calm down. Because your nervous system kind of acts up when it feels nervous, when it feels like it's about to die. Your heart's beating faster, your lungs are breathing faster, your blood's going away from your gut, because it's not a time to be digesting food if you're about to die. All of that stuff's happening. But if you take deep breaths, you're basically telling your body, hey, I wouldn't be doing this if we're about to die. You can calm down so that we can access the higher functions of our brain. So there's box breathing. That's the famous one that Navy SEALs use all the time when they're in missions. It's a 4-second or 5-second inhale. Hold it for that many seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. Hold it again for 5 seconds. Rinse and repeat. That's called box breathing. The other breathing is physiological sigh. Andrew Huberman brought this into the mainstream, which is you take a deep breath, another deep breath after that, and then a long exhale. And the exhale needs to be longer than the inhales you took. So the phenomenon you see with physiological sighs is babies do it. You ever see babies when after they're having a major meltdown, there's this moment where they go, right? Like that's the physiological sigh, right? We can do the same thing as adults to calm our nervous system down. So that's some kind of like short-term work. In the practical side of things too, people who are entrepreneurs in sales and stuff like that, I always teach them like pay attention to your prospect. One trick is, are they curious or are they concerned? If your brain is not in the mood to learn when it's in survival state. So if you ever have conversations where you're not getting through to someone, pay attention. Are they in survival or not? Because if they're in survival, their brain literally cannot receive new information no matter how many times you try to explain it, even though you might be right. So if they're concerned about something, this is not a time to be teaching them or trying to convince them with your words. It's a time to be connecting with them, to help their nervous system feel safe, to relate to them, right? To acknowledge how they're feeling. So in the parenting psychology world too, it's called connect and redirect. So if my child is melting down because she got in trouble for snatching her brother's toy, and I start lecturing her when her brain's in survival crying, like she's not going to think about it. She's not going to get what I'm saying. She's going to continue crying. But if I give her a hug, acknowledge her, hey, you really wanted to play with that toy, didn't you? There's all sorts of ways to do it, but you want to connect with her in some way where she calms down, and then eventually you can redirect to the conversation you want to have. It's like, hey, how do you think you felt when you snatched a toy away and it's not your toy, right? So connect and redirect. It's the same thing in sales, right? If you pay attention, are they curious? When they're curious, it means, hey, my brain's ready to learn. My brain's ready to receive new information, right? So that's one of the things to think about. Is a person curious or concerned? Think about it for yourself too. I'm feeling really concerned right now. Have you ever had that? This is the rabbit hole entrepreneurs go down. I'm so concerned and I keep looking for this information in this course. I signed up for this freebie with that course. I bought this certification, and they're never growing. It's because they're not even aware. I'm trying to learn all these things, but the problem isn't an informational one. It's an emotional one. I'm feeling a certain way. And no matter how much information I give myself, I'm not feeling better.
Yep.
Right? So it's the wrong strategy. So we need to regulate first so that when our thinking brain turns on, we can also figure out what's the right information to look at. What's the context that I need to see? So those are some short-term things. Long-term ones, I mean, this rabbit hole goes deep, but I'll just share a few simple things. It's how do you reprogram the autopilot? Because our personality is really three main things if you think about it. It's how we think, how we feel, and how we act. So these three things are on autopilot pretty much every day. We think 70,000 thoughts a day. 90 to 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. A lot of these thoughts are negative thoughts about ourselves, which trigger more survival. I'm going to fight to work harder. I'm going to numb myself in flight. I'm going to go into freeze mode and not do anything today and veg out. So because of those thoughts, we think the same thoughts every day. Feelings, we feel the same feelings every day. We physiologically, just like you can get addicted to a chemical drug, your body can get addicted to a feeling, because what's a feeling? It's actually a chemical. Whenever you have a thought, electrical activity occurs in your brain, releases these chemicals. They're called neuropeptides, neurotransmitters, makes its way down your spinal cord, hits one of your hormonal centers, and releases the hormone. And now you're feeling that feeling of that hormone. So for example, anger. You think an angry thought, your adrenaline starts coming out from your adrenal glands because it's communicating with your adrenal glands, and you feel your adrenaline. Now you're angry. You're feeling the feeling of anger. So your body can get used to that. So imagine you wake up one morning and you're addicted to anger, and you're going, hey, your body's going, hey, I don't have my anger. And just like a drug addict, it's feeding, hey, brain, give me my anger. And you go, all right, let me think about my jackass boss right now. And you're like, oh, I'm so angry. And while you're feeling so angry with your thoughts and your feelings, your body's going, oh, that feels so good. I got my fix. So we can get addicted to our feelings too. So that goes on autopilot, which tends to trigger a lot of our actions or reactions, right? We do the same things every day. We think the same things. We complain about the same things. So we have to understand that majority of our brain's on autopilot. So once we can see that, there's three things based on neuroscience research that can promote neuroplasticity, which is just a fancy term for your brain's ability to rewire and change. So there's three things that promote it. It's aerobic exercise, meaning your heart rate has to get to a certain level. Meditation. It shows research that it can promote neuroplasticity. Your brain actually physically, biologically changes. And then novelty. So novelty means new experiences. Travel is a perfect example of it. That's why if you ever hear people like Jim Quick, right? Like he tells you to do things that are new. So brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Take a new road home from work. Work from a different room today. Switch it up a little bit. It promotes creativity. It gets that executive state brain turned back on.
Love that.
Yeah. So those are some simple ways to do it. The deeper work comes from just private work. We have to be really aware of what are we actually surviving from. A lot of us have some sort of pain that we're carrying, or unfortunately, things like trauma and things like that. And when we can reshape that, that's when we can snap out of survival on autopilot, and we can get more of an executive state, more on autopilot in our daily life.
You know what I love about this podcast right now is every single guest that we've had on for almost 2 years is quick little overviews, almost promoting their actual business. And that's normally how podcasts go. But the knowledge that you've actually given here is absolutely phenomenal. The details, the examples. I mean, I feel like I've already written down so much, and I definitely want you to, coach and manage myself and also my team members too. But we'll talk about that after the podcast.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to appreciate your mindset on how you actually go about yourself and explaining things. And it's not just quick little overviews; it's giving those exact examples. So, thank you. Now back to the podcast here. So How do you perfect yourself? Do you have a coach that you also go to stay on top of your game, to learn new things? How do you stay true to yourself?
Yeah, I love that question. So it's not just one coach. I have surrounded myself with multiple coaches who have
Can you
become,
explain why
yeah.
too? I feel like it's very important to explain why you need a.
Yeah, it is so important to be selective with your environment. Behavioral psychology shows your environment is the key strategy for change,
Amen.
and it's actually the easiest. So most people, I mean, there's more research that shows more, but there's a fellow named B.F. Skinner. He's like the father of behavioral psychology. So his argument is there's three things that can promote who you become, like what's changed you. So it's your childhood, right? Your genetics and your environment. Those are the three things that is the factors of why you are the way you are. But two of these things, you can't change it. You can't change your childhood. You can't change your genetics, which modern day research actually kind of proves is that wrong, by the way. I don't know if you ever got into epigenetics, right? We actually can change our genes to an extent, which is really fascinating. But he's been around for a long time. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't think he is, but his work has been around for a very long time. So that's why in behavioral psychology, the strategy is how do you change up your environment? Because there's research that shows this, right? There's research that shows, I think it was like a long table, there's a jar of chocolates, and they would put a person like 2 feet away from the jar of chocolates. And then the second setting is they put the jar of chocolates like 8 feet away, for example. And they count how many times did that person dip into the jar of chocolates. And as you might expect, the one that had it right in front of them ate the most chocolates compared to the one far away. Mm-hmm. So practical things like that is like, if you change up your physical environment, it can help. If it's like, oh, I don't want to doom scroll anymore before I go to bed. You can put the charger in the living room where you have to walk all the way to the living room to get your phone if you really wanted to. You just add that friction point. But when it comes to your personality, remember, it's how you think, how you act, and how you feel. If multiply that by a team, that's what your culture is. It's your culture is how they act, how they think, how they feel as a group, right? So how do you change that? This is kind of where, if you can switch up the environment, this is like the people in your life, right? The story I always share that's so powerful is, I don't know if have you guys ever been to Death Valley in California?
Yes.
Right?
No, so I'm in Nevada, so it's a quick hop, jump, skipping away for me.
Yeah, so it's one of the driest areas of North America, and it's called Death Valley because nothing grows on Death Valley, right? So it's like pretty much dead, the land there. So, but the interesting thing was back in, I want to say it was 2006, received 11.5 inches of rain. And over the next few weeks, you could not see the floor of Death Valley because it was covered in flowers. It was really beautiful. So there's a brilliant educator, Ken Robinson, and he posed this question. He said, what if Death Valley wasn't dead? And it was just dormant. All it needed was the right environment to help it grow. And that story always stuck with me because it's a question I ask myself. Is my environment helping me grow? Or is it keeping me dead and stunted? So ever since then, I was very selective. Like, this is why I meet regularly with people like Vin. I surround myself with coaches. I surround myself with experts. And this is who I regularly surround myself with. And especially people who don't think the same way I do. I'm very intentional about that. Because if you look at the divisiveness of our country, for example, whether it's with like politics and stuff, it's people who just stick with other people that think the same and too afraid to have conversations with people who think differently.
Can I throw a wrench into this?
Of course.
I'm going to give my example here because I feel like a few people can relate to this situation. You have a great big team, right? You have 40, 50 people that are managing your other team here. You have a great culture and community, and people say nothing but great things, reviews, testimonials. Like, it's great. How do you enhance that? How do you trigger more? How do you make it better from already a positive mindset by bringing in such good influence and paying well and giving them paid time off and lunches and, employees of the month and the year and parties all the time? How do you trigger that more, that getting him from a comfortable state to even a better environment? Is it just opportunity of growth?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. So I'm sure you two are familiar with the term flow state.
Mm-hmm.
right? So flow state, just like if you complain, that could be contagious and other people start complaining. It's the same with flow state. It's a mode where you're just really operating at your peak. Like that's the way I would define what peak performance is you're able to tap into your flow state. People like Stephen Kotler, he's like a big person that talks about this a lot, right? So how do you get a team into flow? If you're saying that's the word you use was they're comfortable, right? Comfortable usually actually signals survival. Like there's already an autopilot here. They're used to staying in this mode. It could be a great culture, right? But how do you help them perform even better than that?
Exactly.
And get them out. So if they're already likely in a survival because they got used to this, is this making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Even though things are good, they might have gotten used to the good. But does good mean great? Like how do you go from good to great? So good to great is people, when you're in your executive state, you're able to tap into a state of flow. So what is a state of flow? Human beings are limited by and restricted by three main things. We're restricted by this body that we have, this bodysuit we've been installed in. So you're restricted by your body. You're restricted by time. We're always running against the clock. We got to get these things done by a certain time. And we're restricted by our environment, right? We didn't choose where we were born, who was our parents. There's a lot of environmental factors that we right? That we're restricted by. So then when you're in flow state though, when you're so engaged in something, what happens? You lose track of the things you're restricted by as a human being, don't you? You lose track of time. You lose track of your body. You lose track of your environment.
Mm.
You're just in the zone. People call it like being in the zone.
Mm.
These are people when you ask them like, how the hell did you get all these things done so fast? It's like, I don't know. I just did it. Right? It's like, how are you so good at what you're doing? So it's our ability to tap into flow. And what happens is when you're in executive state, because you're not focused on yourself, you're able to tap into something greater in the greater collective. So this is why in organizations, mission is actually really important. Like, how do we agree on a mission? Like, whether you hate him or love him, Elon Musk, right? The culture at SpaceX, they're actually really passionate about this mission that's greater than themselves. We want to colonize. We want to become an interplanetary species. They're very passionate about that. That's the greater mission that they can all collectively agree on, even though they have all these differences. You see what I'm saying? So if we can teach an organization how to tap into that, that's when it's almost supernatural, like the things you accomplish, because you're all on the same page. You're there for the same mission. And it's usually a mission that's greater than just yourself. Right? And what happens is, because you're in executive state, what happens when you're in survival state? You're in a consumption mode. Take. I'm going to take, right? So if you have a team that's in survival mode, ooh, I like all these things my company gives me. Take. But what are they giving? What are they contributing? Right? How do we train an organization to increase their creation to consumption ratio? So when we get into an executive state, we're really good at creating versus consuming. And we're not doing it transactionally, because in survival state, it becomes transactional. I'm doing this because I want this from you. I'm doing this because I want that from you. From a business perspective, sure, there is a level of transaction, right? You pay people for their work, right? Like that makes sense. But what if you have that and more? What if you have a group of people that's tuned into a greater vision that you all agree on? Because it's already happening, guys. What was the Great Resignation? That's exactly what that was. I don't support the mission of this team. You could pay me all you want. Or you're going to talk to me that way? I quit. What is Gen Z doing? Gen Z, the phrase was quiet quitting. I'm going to be on the clock, but I'm not going to do the work because I don't care.
Entitlement.
Yeah, there's that too, right? And there's many reasons for that. But there's that aspect. And then there eventually evolved into quiet vacationing. I'm going to go on vacation while I'm on the clock, which is nuts, right? But like that's a whole side conversation of why does that happen? If we understand the brain, there's reasons why all of that stuff happens. But that's the way to think about it. It's already happening. People are craving purpose and mission, something greater than themselves. They want to be tuned into that because it makes you feel alive. And it's really fascinating because if you look at it from a practical perspective, it's always been there. I have 3 little kids. And when they hit about 3 or 4 years old, what's the number one question they love to ask you, right? I don't know if Sage is doing it yet, right? Why?
Yeah,
why this? Why that?
Why.
If you think about the question why, it has nothing to do with your survival. You don't see squirrels sitting there going, why is the sky blue? I wonder why. They're just busy surviving. It has nothing to do with your survival. It's a question about meaning. For whatever reason, us humans, because our brain is different, we crave meaning. That's when we experience the most joy, when we feel like we're living a meaningful life, right? So that's why a lot of us think that we're going to get meaning by working hard. We get the nice job, the salary, the family, the house. And then when you get older, we usually go back to asking this question, why? What the hell's the point of all of this? Why is this here? So it's something that is inherently in us. And whether it happens to you in your 20s or 30s, and many other people it happens in their 60s, it's an important question. And the more we become aware of that, like that's why Simon Sinek, in my opinion, got so popular, right? The whole find your why. If you can do that at an organizational level, it starts from the leader down, in my opinion, but you get performing at a different level. And when you have creativity in your group, the ideas that can come out of that. Have you heard of the Flamin' Hot Cheetos person? I think Vin was telling me that story with me or something like that. The reason why Flamin' Hot Cheetos was because of some Mexican janitor going like, hey, our people want this type of flavor or something like that, right? So when you have a diversity of thought in a company, because a lot of them are in a creative mode versus a consuming mode, because most employees, honestly speaking, what are they there for? They're there to collect a paycheck, right? It's transactional. That's already survival. But if you can create a culture where they're also in a creative mode, they want to contribute, they want to express their value and their genius, that's a force to be reckoned with. Because what's the thing that happens all the time? Someone doesn't feel seen, felt, and heard. They go off, do their own thing, and they became your competition, and they did it better. That could have been your employee, right? How do you make the genius of your company come out? It starts with this. How do you help them feel psychologically safe enough so that they go into a creative mode versus a consumption mode, and not be in consumption on autopilot? Because then you get comfortable in the routine day to day.
I feel like I can keep going, but it's just a me and you podcast at this point.
No, it's important. This is the biggest thing, right? Is people don't know how to rally. But here's the interesting part. Humans are social creatures, right? There's a million times that I talk to people and they don't realize the biggest thing that they're usually craving in like any and every scenario is meaning and connection. Most reasons companies fall apart is the lack of people buying into the mission, the lack of the connectedness, the lack of trust in the leadership, the teams. When you look at relationships, there's troubles in people's marriages because of the fact that they don't know how to connect, not because of the fact that they don't know how to live together. That's obviously a part, but the biggest issue is that they don't connect. They don't see each other. Everything comes down to connection, but ultimately not just connection to something greater, because humans do have this desire to belong to a I guess I would say a collective, right?
Yeah.
So now when you're talking about company culture and things like that, what it really is getting people to see themselves not just working at an organization, but that it's their organization. This is one of my favorite things to talk about from like the fire department. When we first started off as probies and we were in the academy, and they'd yell at you and they'd be like, clean up your hallway. And I'm like, this isn't my hallway. Like, take care of your locker room. Like, it's not my locker room. This is the fire department's locker room. This is the fire department's hallway, right? But eventually you kind of understand the message as it is your hallway. It's your locker room. It's carry a sense of pride everywhere you go. And there's somewhere along the lines that I think a lot of people are losing that. Would you say that the average person lacks more purpose or meaning in their life that keeps them disconnected from stepping into these greater executive states?
Yes, I think they're disconnected with their purpose more than ever, and my heart breaks for that. Think about our environment now, right? It started with social media, for example. It's paying attention to every single piece of data. Did you like it? Did you comment on it? How long did you watch this one? How long did you watch that video? Did you not like it? So based on that, what does it do? It shows you more of what it thinks you like.
Right.
So now you're in this bubble where it became a world where within a span of even an hour or so, you can shift a belief about the world. There's millions of people in our country, right, in the US right now, that believe the earth is flat, right? All because of an algorithm. Not because they're stupid, in my opinion. It's because of an algorithm that keeps feeding you more of your bias. And there's not a debate about whether it is or not, because some of these arguments actually are pretty compelling, right? It's like, how do you know? Did you ever go into space and look at the Earth? I'm like, I guess not, right? But I did see the curve of it when you're on a plane. But my point is, it's how fast people can shift a belief. And that's what's causing even more divisiveness. Because your feed on your social will look different from my feed based on what we like to watch. And the algorithm is programmed to show you more of what you want.
Mm.
So now, that's like phase one. Phase two, what's happening is we have AI now. AI, which has more, it's smarter than the average human. It has an IQ of, I forget what it was, like they got it to like 150. So smarter than the average American. It's pretty high, the IQ, because the amount of information stored in it, like, it's just crazy. And you have these LLMs, the language learning models, that's continuing learning. You develop a personality, you can program a personality with your AI where people are developing an emotional connection with the AI. So the research actually shows that short-term wise therapy, they're using ChatGPT, for example, as their therapist, and it actually is working. Like, it's actually beneficial. But long-term, it's detrimental. It's damaging. So what's happening is the human, at some point you wake up and you go, oh, wait, this thing I'm forming an emotional connection to isn't real. It's just a robot. But people are actually falling in love with their AIs. I think there was an article about that once, right? Like, where there was a guy in India that proposed to their AI. But we have humanoid robots too. You can take the personality, put it into a humanoid robot. It could be your sex robot. It could be your life partner. Imagine our younger generations. That's your first relationship, romantic relationship, is an AI bot. Does everything you want it to do. Every single thing. At what point do you wake up from the bubble going, wait, this isn't real? Can you imagine, like, that's your first relationship and you date a human, you try it out. I'm going to try a human relationship. And then you go, ew, why do you have different opinions than me? Why do you disagree with me? Like, why do you have your own, why do you like things that I don't like? Or why do I like things that you don't like? So it's causing a lot of this divisiveness. And I think that's preventing us from getting into our executive state for that reason, because it's just keeping us in a comfort zone that we've created for ourselves without even realizing that we're in this bubble that's not even real. Because in order to get to your executive state, it requires discomfort. I think that's the hard part for people to accept. People think, oh, I should get rid of my uncomfortable feelings, then I will be a high performer. That's actually not true. High performers are able to perform amidst the uncomfortable feelings. They accept it. They learn from it. They let it be there. They let it teach you what it needs to teach you, right? So I think the best way I like to describe it is, you ever have that friend, like, that you trust your friend and they're recommending something to you, they're hounding you about it, and you're like really resistant, I don't want to do it, I don't want to. But because it's your friend and you trust your friend, you listen to the advice and then you go, oh my God, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I think this level of trust is diminishing. People are going to need it more and more as we continue to get into our own bubbles like this. Because how else will we grow as a species if we decide to just keep things the same more so? So I don't know, that's why I geek out on things like innovation and what's changing. Like, it's just really exciting. And I'm very optimistic about the future, despite how scary this sounds, right? Like, this kind of stuff.
Well, there's two different mindsets of looking at it. And, I talk about this with my team all day long. There's, AI is coming, robotics are coming. So you can either be like the regular sheep and say, yeah, it's coming. And you can be, essentially, you're afraid of it. You have fear and you're just not going to do anything about it. That's one. Or you can take that fear and you can embrace it, and you can see how you can utilize that to increase your knowledge. Like, I think the whole goal, if you're talking about it from just a business standpoint or a regular employee standpoint, is we're getting rid of the regular resume. We're getting rid of a graphic designer, a content writer, a coach, a director, a manager, whatever the case may be. You're now going to, with the help of AI, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a multifaceted individual. So going into this flow state instead of a survival state, if you can utilize this and embrace that fear with AI, you're now transitioning everything about yourself. If I can do that with my company and give them that entrepreneur mindset, That's my entire goal. Like you saying that just kind of put like acknowledgement onto what I'm essentially trying to build, giving them the tools to succeed, whether they stay with my company or not, it doesn't matter. Getting into that creative mindset, that's the entire goal. Embracing the fear with knowledge. It's the only thing you can do.
Yeah. So what happens when you're in fear is, what does your brain do? It sticks with what you know.
Survival.
But it's survival.
That's it.
But if you're stuck on a problem,
You're comfortable.
the reason you're stuck on a problem is because what you know, the answer's not there.
This is another reason why you hire a coach, though. That
Correct.
is the prime reason.
Correct. So that you move into areas that you don't know, where the answer is that you're looking for, and eventually you get connected to that answer, and then you have a breakthrough. So high performers, there's two key qualities I've noticed about high performers. Number one, the way I like to explain it is their willingness to be wrong, right? So here's what I mean by this. I had gotten briefly coached by this really cool coach. Her name's Rhonda Britton. And I want to share her story real quick because this impacted me a lot, right? At 14 years old, she was going out for Father's Day brunch. Their parents were splitting up. So dad was coming from somewhere else, pulls up to the front of the curb. Rhonda and her mom are going out the yard towards the car while her sisters are still getting ready in the house. Dad gets out of the car, says, hold on, I need to get my coat from the trunk. Opens the trunk, doesn't get his coat, gets a shotgun instead. So there's a little bit of a trigger warning. Starts yelling at mom, shoots mom, and mom's on the floor. And then he points the gun at Rhonda. And Rhonda's standing there in freeze mode, frozen. And mom was still alive at this point. So she gets up and she's like shouting, don't do it. He didn't know, dad didn't know mom was still alive. So points the gun at mom a second time, shoots her again, points the gun at himself, pulls the trigger. Murder-suicide, who happened to be Rhonda's parents. And she went into, as you would imagine, this is a major trauma. What did she do? She went into major survival mode. Fight, flight, freeze. How did she fight? She was a straight A student. She performed. She thought, maybe if I keep performing well, I will feel better. How did she flee? She became an alcoholic. And she attempted suicide 3 different times, which is one of the ultimate forms of a flight response, if you think about it. And how did she freeze? Plenty of days. She didn't want to make decisions. Didn't want to get out of bed. Numb herself out. Yet she turned her life around one day. And she became this amazing coach, ended up with her own reality television show as a coaching show, won an Emmy Award in the 90s, been on Oprah not once, but she got invited to Oprah twice. And she turned her life around. And she said this to the group, and it stuck with me so much to this day. She said, until you're willing to be wrong about everything you know, nothing's ever going to change. And it's not saying that everything you know is wrong. It's until you're willing to be wrong about everything you know. Because a lot of us in survival hold on to the beliefs. I can't do this. I suck. I'm a loser. I don't have what it takes. We hold on to that. It's comfortable for us, as weird as that sounds, to stick with that belief system about ourselves, stick with those thoughts about ourselves. So that's what I've always noticed about people, is like, our insecurity makes us want to hold on to something and hold on to it for dear life. But when we're willing to be wrong, right? Because if you ever meet those people that always have to be right, that's a fight mode, by the way. Because at some point in their life, maybe they got shamed for being wrong about something or yelled at. So they fight to be right all the time. Right? They keep being argumentative with you and stubborn. But our willingness to be wrong gets us into our executive state. So you get yourself out of tunnel vision and you go, maybe there's something here that I haven't seen before that I need to look at. So that's a key quality I've noticed in high performers. Their willingness to be wrong. They're very open, right? They're not tied to an outcome. They're very fluid and calm about things, right? It's very zen if you think about it.
Right.
But from the brain perspective, it's an executive state going on. The second thing I noticed is ownership. Ownership. They take ownership over everything. You know what was life-changing? This is the reason that sparked me to do my work, was this lesson of ownership. I used to say this phrase to my daughter when my oldest, who's about to be 10, I used to say this phrase to her, you're making me so mad right now. Whenever she was not listening, I would say, you're making me so mad. And after I studied all this brain stuff, I'm going, whoa. First off, what would a little girl interpret that statement as? Oh, I'm the cause of daddy's anger. Something I did made dad mad. And whoa, when dad's mad, that's scary. So I don't want to quote unquote make him mad. But how might that impact her as an adult? What happens if she has an unethical boss that overworks her? And because she's afraid of making the boss mad, she complies and just deals with it. What if she ends up with a partner one day, maybe some boy, and he pressures her to sleep with him? And because she's afraid of making him mad, she'll give in. So that really, really got me off my butt. And I understood this is what ownership is. You are never the cause of my emotion. I am the cause of my emotion because of my own experiences. The reason why I was getting mad was I used to think these thoughts a lot about my dad, which I didn't have the greatest relationship with back then. I used to think thoughts like, if I'm ever a dad, I'm not going to be a crappy dad like mine. So the moment my daughter's not listening, my brain's going, hey, look, she's not listening to you because you're a bad dad. I go into fight mode, I yell, I'm angry. My brain's literally attacking her verbally, viewing her as a threat. And the very thing I want with my daughter, which is to be connected with her, it's not happening. So all I did was I changed the phrase from you're making me mad to I'm feeling mad. This is my feeling. Because there's such a thing as other fathers out there in the same exact situation might not get mad. These are my feelings. Mm. So people who take full ownership, these are my thoughts, these are my feelings, these are my actions. They empower themselves to enter into that powerful executive state simply from taking ownership. And it's a deep rabbit hole to understand the truth of why this is true. That's where the coaching becomes effective. It's like, you might not believe it. Really? Like, that person was such a jackass. That's why I'm mad. This person did that. That's why I'm mad. It's really easy to do that game. But you can get to a place where you really realize the truth on why that's not true. Because otherwise, like, when I think about my loved ones, and if I blame them for my feelings, right? That's not ownership, and it's damaging the relationship. People ask me that, like, how do you have a successful marriage? I'm like, don't make them responsible for your happiness. Don't put that on them. That's not their responsibility, right? But yeah, those are the two key traits I've noticed about peak performers. They take major, major ownership, and they have this willingness to be wrong. And they're very curious for that reason, right? They're always curious. They're always learning. They make better calculated decisions when it comes to helping a team. They're empathetic. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the group, the team. Do you want a boss in survival state that's only thinking about themselves and their own benefits? No. So anyway, that's kind of what it came down to for me, as I realized over the years. It's transformative for me.
Well, geez.
Dropping bombs again.
We slated like an hour and a half for this, and that's still not enough time because we're pretty much at the end here, but I know that we could keep going. So I don't know, man. At the interest of not wanting to end, I feel like I want to run it, but I also can't because I know I have something to do. So, Eugene, you have shared a ton of phenomenal nuggets with this audience today. I'm sure that they've all got something to go back and reflect on. I got one final question for you, and I'm sure that this is going to be the question on everybody's mind. And if it isn't, you better go rewatch the episode until you're not dumb enough to not have this question. Where can people find you? How could they get connected to you? What is the best way to get into the Dr. Choi system of influence?
Yeah, you can, if you want to find me on social, I'm not that active these days, but I am there. I will read the messages. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, Eugene K. Choi, or you can go on the website, eugenekchoi.com. If you want to join my community, that's kind of the work I do now. It's just like, how do you change your autopilot? Like, how do you do this as a skill? That's on neurohackingschool.com. It's a little monthly membership where we meet once a month and you get all the course modules in there.
Well, dude, that is freaking awesome. I hope that a bunch of people join, because if they don't, I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah.
Don't even hire me. Go hire Eugene. He's better than I am. So with that being said, man, thanks so much for joining us. Stick around for a minute after the show. I got to tell you one more thing. And dude, absolutely a pleasure hanging out with you today. I can't wait to see you again in a few days or whenever our call is.
Yeah, likewise. Had a blast.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming, guys. There you have it. Make sure that you check out Eugene's stuff. Tune in for another episode of the 1% podcast. As always, I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And that was Eugene. See you, everybody.